communicating to the masses. I don't even know how to use my own equipment. All right. This is Beard Banter episode 55. I'm not even looking at the camera. That's how laid back we are today. But I will say that this is probably going to get spicy today. I've got a topic that's been on my mind and on my heart for about a year. And I just finally decided to pull the trigger with these two fine gentlemen and have a conversation. What are we talking about? We're talking about conferences. As I sit here at GurCon, and I've made it to Wild West Hackin' Fest, I'm speaking there later this year. I wanted to reflect even more on the challenges of what the MSP conferences have become and in our world. And so let's just open it up. What's on your mind, gentlemen?
My immediate thought is I really like the conferences like this, the one we're at here. The production quality is trash.
Zero.
Yeah.
It's zero. There's a dude in a Pikachu costume and a sign that's been printed at Costco for $100. That's it.
Like, you can't see the screen from half of the big room.
Nope.
They used to have two screens, but they had so much trouble getting the two screens to work that they went back to one. Like, it's literally, literally there's the AV budget must be like 3 guys just shit down. Like,
the stuff we pull out of the truck, just like this right here, right? Yeah, 100%.
But the content's awesome.
Agreed.
And we live in a world where in our space that's not true. Like, you have really amazing production value and really shit content in many cases.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is an impossible task. I mean, I'm going to be watching Jason Street talk. And by the way, I like him because I didn't remember he's talking about it as well as he's one of those people that you're going to go. It's going to be a great talk. He does work for a company. So it's not like he's some random independent company. There is a strategy by which the vendors can send their employees to come do talks, and we'll sit and watch them.
And I think the security community has it figured out, right? Like, and it wasn't always this way. I think that Dave
and there's examples of it being broken, right? Black Hat and RSA, like those are exactly down the space that the MSP conferences are heading.
And I think that Dave and John and a couple other leaders in the industry, Chris Roberts, I think, is in that group. I think they put a lot of active effort into making that a little bit less toxic and a little bit more collaborative, right? So it took effort to get people to the point where they're willing to share novel concepts and cool new things that they're doing that will teach the entire community and make them better, right? Like, it doesn't. You're right. You do get vendor talks, right? Like, but the people speaking from vendors are talking about cool shit they're doing. They're not
unrelated directly to the vendor product.
And some of that's because these are mostly services companies, right? Like, what I will say at the security conference, I don't see a lot of product companies talking as much.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's largely services.
It's companies. People trying to prove that they're valuable and they know some things and that they, kind of that space. Let's level set though. So why did I want to do this talk? I want to talk about where we are and where we've gotten to in the MSP conference land.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to compare that to what we see in the GurCons and the B-sides and those things. So we've gone from my normal year, starting sometime in March or April, having a really heavy spot June and July and August, and always ending at IT Nation Connect in November. We were talking about this, right?
We talked about it yesterday.
How many are there now? Like,
it doesn't end at Connect anymore. I mean, I have at least one after that, maybe 2. And I mean, one of them's year-end planning meeting for CompTIA. That's not really a conference. But it used to be like you were done at the beginning of November, and it used to be that there was really nothing in January, and now there's
300, 400 conferences. So that's one thing. There's tons of conferences. So we have way more of them. Everybody's trying to measure ROI. Everybody's growing conferences.
And some of them have stretched the conference to be way longer than
it's a 6-dayer or something, or 4 days, and it's and all that. So we have too many of them, I think, is a first statement. But at the same time, the one set of populace that has profited the most from this is my $16 water, my $250 podium, right? And you've run a conference. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, people don't know that pop you take in the hallway is $7.
Every one of them.
Every one of them is $7 or $8, right? Like so I help with planning for MSP GeekCon, and breakfast, that shitty continental breakfast you eat,
Yep.
costs us $52 a head.
Yeah, that you would never pay anywhere else.
You would like that. It's no better than the breakfast you
Yeah.
get for free at like the
Yeah.
Holiday Inn you're staying at, right? Like,
Even in San Diego Harbor,
Yeah.
sitting out looking at the sunrise, you would not pay that much for a continental
No,
breakfast.
yeah.
Right? Like,
And it hurts more to all the people who complain about the food.
yeah, 100%.
I mean, there's just so many hidden fees in it, and so what I will say is we get the conference space for free, right? Like
Sure.
we're not paying for the room in any
Right.
case, right? But to do that, we have to guarantee so many hotel room bookings, right? Which is, by the way, if you've ever noticed conferences hassling you to book your hotel rooms, it's because they're on the hook.
Right.
We're on the hook for 800 or something room nights, right? So like we have to pay them if we don't hit that booking. It is very expensive to run a conference. Our cost, we're at $400 a ticket. I think last I checked, our cost was $549 per person. So we lose $150 a ticket for people we sell.
And that's with vendor support and people sponsoring and all of those things.
Sponsors cover the difference, right?
So way too many events, Darren Cirillo says, right, in the chat. So yeah, agreed. Way too many. I think the costs are escalating for those conferences. I think the ROIs are often misattributed or hard to measure too.
They're impossible,
right? Like I got a lead. Well, at which point on the touch cycle, the 22 touches that were involved, was that the deciding factor, right?
You saw them at 7 conferences. Like, is it like there's value to that?
Yeah.
Right? There's value to
and I'm not trying to crap on conferences. That's not my intention to this. I'm
Right.
saying that we need to talk about what's broken so that we can get back to, I think, what drives success. What also I think has happened is, and I'll reflect on this, when I first started at my current employment, I had been speaking on stage as an MSP, trying to drive people to be better, trying to improve security, and I had largely just been asked to come speak.
Yep.
When I transitioned to Vendorland for the first year and a half, almost 2 years, it was largely the same.
Yep.
I still was able to go talk about cool topics, bring up stuff, suggest it, and they're like, cool, we know you're at a vendor, we don't care, come bring value, come bring data. But I feel like it's shifted to where almost every conference, if I was not paying and using that paid slot as part of a vendor, there weren't many options for me to be a speaker.
Well, a lot of conferences don't even run a real CFP.
At all, yeah.
At all, yeah. Like,
Connect does, right?
Connect does, and some of that was me and some others pushing them to do that.
Saying, hey, ask for people to bring topics, bring people in and educate. And maybe in my mind, the fundamental difference is we've lost what our purpose is. Rob Reck, my chief trust officer currently, says that what makes up trust are 3 things. 1, having a 1-to-1 say-do ratio, not related here really. 2 is having the ability to have hard conversations first, again, not really there. But the third one is aligned incentives. And I think the interesting part about conferences is trying to find that aligned incentive. For example, if I can make this MSP better at understanding this concept, saying this concept, selling this concept, driving and implementing this concept, then by that proxy, I will do better. Right? Like in that regard, they will grow, they will have more clients, they will grow their book of business, and we will have a better opportunity space, right? Like that's the premise. So what works in that same regard? Tom, you've been to GERCON now, you've been to Wild West Hackenfest or about to. What's different there? What is that alignment?
Well, first, it's not run by a company. So the goal of company-driven conferences is to get you to use more of that direct product they have or their marketplace or however it is. There's their outcome. GERCON doesn't have that goal at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? GERCON's like, I want to see all my hacker friends up on stage.
100%.
Vendors, come help us pay for this. Because the ticket prices, I think they said they haven't changed the ticket price in 11, 12 years?
$150.
Yeah.
For the lowest ticket.
Yeah, so it's still really cheap. And this goes to any of the community-driven conferences, the open source ones, whether it's Linux Fest Northwest or even Ohio Linux Fest. And there's so many of those. And because there's not a company driving it, it's driven by just a group of people that go, I'd love to educate and get more people excited about the community, especially Code Mash. I mean, we know because you're involved in that so much. It's the same thing. What do they really want? What is the goal of you and the board members?
I'm not on the board of that one, but Code Mash has 250 speakers over the 4 days, right? Like it is literally just
mostly practitioners.
All practitioners.
All practitioners.
There are 2 spots, Wednesday and Thursday, over essentially lunch. That they run paid speaking slots. They announce them as paid speaking slots, right? And you can go in. It's very much sponsored session, And it's on the vendors to drive people to those rooms, right?
Right.
Like one of the things that I was really pushing on Connect to do is like identify your paid speaking slots.
Sure.
Identify
Just
that.
put it in bold, big
Sure.
bold.
Sure.
The problem is if you did that for most conferences, it would just be all paid speaking slots.
Yeah, well, and
You
there's
just
a
say
lot
whole
of
conference.
weird back channel stuff that it's a paid speaking slot, but it's not really a paid speaking slot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like
You do this for me and I'll
yeah.
do that for you,
Yeah.
kind of trades, tit for tat. Yeah.
Yeah, you bought a sponsorship over here, so I guess you can come talk over here. Is that paid or not?
We
Yeah.
run into an interesting problem though, right? Like, so if you're the average MSP, in the first show you go to, and I'm going to call one out my name here, and Jerry's probably going to get mad at me.
Oh, this will be fun.
You go to an ASCII conference.
Sure.
Would you ever go to another conference?
Like, are you enticed and inspired
You
and
don't
driven?
learn anything there.
Yeah.
It's basically just like thinly veiled sales pitches all day.
Sure.
Right. So like and that's an interesting one because usually it's free for the MSPs to attend, right? Like if you're a big enough size, I think they'll even give you a hotel room for the
Yep.
one night if you're a member, right? Like, but at what point do these conferences become timeshare pitches?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it should push to, like, you go to this conference here, Wild West Hacking Fest, or Code Mash. All three have the same thing. They're all practitioners
Yep.
giving the talks. That's almost like should be a rule that would improve a lot of
Yeah.
conferences.
Even if
Give
they
me a
took the
practitioner.
same model and
Yeah.
just said, let's just fill the speaking spots with practitioners and drive it that way.
It's hard though.
Okay.
So putting my MSP Geek Con planning
Yep. We
hat
talked
on,
about this yesterday.
Yeah, we don't have enough people submitting talks. I want so many more technical talks, but we haven't. That may be a thing, but there's another problem though, right? Like people they emulate the talks they've seen,
Yes.
right? So they emulate the talks that the shitty vendors talks that are giving, right? Like I would very much like to see a talk on how to use PowerShell to manage using or PowerShell to manage your 365 environment, or give me a talk on using Terraform to set baseline provisioning shit somewhere, right? Like
You just tackled it though. You could almost fix this by when the vendors do speak,
yeah,
they find a practitioner that's done cool things
Yeah.
with their tools and systems that solves a problem, and then let them speak about it.
I think Flo did that.
They did, yeah, 100%. Great call out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff, Flo. Roost is on it. So
And kind of going back to like the headhunting part, years ago when I was involved in PenguinCon, back when it was at its heyday of awesome, we really headhunted people. That was part of it. We knew who to talk to. We reached out to them and brought them there, did what we could, because you look at the lineup from some of the old PenguinCon stuff, because it's all archived out there. Bruce Schneier keynoted there.
Yeah.
So did Corey Doctorow.
Sure.
So you had some A-list celebrities there. Same with because it was a literary conference combined with the sci-fi conference combined
Right.
with the Linux conference. The weird
that's a
mashup
weird
combination.
mashup.
It's a weird mashup. But I will tell you, we had the best people teaching you Bash, like walking you through step by step deep technical stuff.
And most of them wouldn't even charge. Like I
No.
know that
Yeah,
Chris,
correct.
like when I did it, I didn't charge for it. Yes, I had
Yeah.
the luxury of somebody else paying my salary.
Yeah.
But Chris Roberts constantly does this. And I think back to your kind of B-sides discussion.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of your big players, Dave Kennedy comes to a GERCon where they're certainly not paying him anything,
Nope.
only to give back, which means there is a subset of humans out there.
Yes.
I'm on the end, but I'm like way down here on quality and skill
Yeah.
set. But
Same.
there's a subset of humans out there that are willing to go dedicate their time to make people better just
Yes.
for the benefit
Yeah.
of increasing
I mean,
security and capabilities.
I attend a good number of conferences. I paid for very few. I will
Yeah.
openly admit that. But I am almost always willing to speak on any topic that I can speak.
Your
and tell somebody
attendees
about.
can become
Yeah.
your speakers,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
your point, right?
It
To the
takes a lot
same
of
breath.
curation to do that.
does.
There's not everyone's great at speaking, but you figure out who is. You go, that person, they spoke at this conference or that security conference. You just reach out to them, and a lot of them are willing to even just fly themselves out there, going, "Yeah, that was a great
Sure,
time."
I'm in.
Yeah.
One of the things we did at CodeMet or MSP GeekCon this year that I was really proud of is we wanted to make sure at least 10 or 20% of our speakers, it was their first time speaking.
That's cool too.
And
That's
I think
cool,
that
too.
we
That
should do
curates more of
right.
them.
Like
Yeah.
we should encourage new speakers. We even were offering mentorship. If you need somebody to mentor you and help you through this process here, like GERCon
For
had
the
a talk
speaking.
yesterday
Yep.
about how to give your first
Well,
conference presentation.
That's
Outside of our space, I won't mention because it's kind of not safe for work, but there's a podcast that part of what they do is they have a ton of people telling stories. It's a storytelling podcast. But before you do it, the person who runs the podcast, you're required, if you want to talk, go through his little training course. It's
That's
free,
cool.
but it's part of how he coaches you to build that
Yeah.
story, and he helps you create your first time talk.
Yeah.
And I think there's an option for that where you don't tell them maybe, you go, you're going to go through this.
Yeah.
And you can do the fast path if you seem to say, yes, I understand all this really quick.
Sure.
But, that is part of how he's curated what is one of the top Apple podcasts with a bunch of first time people sharing stories. It's kind of a cool concept.
That's cool.
That they do it that way.
And there's a lot of those, like Mothman, like the Moth Radio Hour.
Yeah,
like there's
sure.
a bunch of interesting things where people are storytellers, and a lot of it is just getting people out of their shell and getting over the imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Like it's you have something. Everyone has something interesting to share to somebody else. Like it you may find it mundane, but like you may be solving a problem 300 of other people have, and you just don't realize it because you think your problem is unique to you.
Well, you gave a really good tip last night when we were talking about it. It's not only putting your slides together, but then having a speaker's notes of don't talk about this.
Yep.
Because frequently, us practitioners who work in tech will wander off topic.
Oh, yeah.
and
No,
on
like
tangent.
this whole conversation right here. Not at all. No, I don't believe it.
Right. So that's something to really consider. It's just there's little tips, and it's not like I'm trying to put you through a training course before you speak, but a good half hour with someone, that might be all it takes. Half hour, give them an outline with some suggestions and go, oh, that's how I build my deck. That's how I do it. Oh, put these this is what keeps you from going on a tangent. Have a great day.
And this is a practice skill.
Yeah.
Like it is the speaking, the quality of the speaking that I did when I first started doing.
Oh,
I think
dude.
it's considerably lower than it is
I
now.
sucked hard. I suck a little less now
Yeah,
after a
yeah.
few hundred of them.
Yeah.
But bro, and I think that's the piece. So just to not wander too far off. The conversation we've covered is there's too many conferences.
Yeah.
Yep. The cost is ever increasing. We can tackle that piece, right? We can tackle the piece of the stuff that is presented is very much sales. It doesn't educate. Even if you're selling, let's say you're selling Roost. Great example.
Yeah.
I could sell Roost on the concept of rhetoric, of the understanding of you need to automate. Automation saves time. You can save money. Like I can do all that pitching to get someone bought into the concept. Yep. But I could also do some of that same pitching by just showing it.
Yes.
Here's how I automated a user onboarding using these 5 things and ensured that all the things always happen the same way.
Yep.
Let me walk you through it. Let me help you understand it. You both get the fact that Roost helped me save time, got more efficient, got more efficacious while demonstrating it. That's one change that would make such a difference.
And some of this almost seems unique to our industry, right? Because PuppetConf, right,
Okay.
which I attended for a long
Sure.
time. I went to the first 10 of them.
That's a lot of puppet comps.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Side tangent aside.
And it was exactly that. It was people coming in showing the really cool use cases they were doing with the
100%.
tool. Like, hey, I'm using it to manage network devices, and here's how. Or like, here's how you use a CI/CD stack with it, right? And it was all practitioners.
Yeah.
And I think they probably did a hunt. I think they probably approached some of those people. And some
Like,
of those
I
people
think
ended
you
up
built
working
something really neat
Puppet.
here. I think this would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
We years ago, and what got me into tech was 2 things: 2600 Club, which
Sure.
was the meetups for that. That was in the 90s, and right after that, I jumped into the Linux users group. The same thing. I got to meet some awesome people. We had the guy who did Beowulf clusters.
Nice.
He came there to the university and spoke, and it was like, this is amazing.
That's cool.
That was the coolest stuff back then in the late 90s, early 2000s.
And I'm okay with the big vendors having their flagship conferences.
Sure.
I'm okay with that. I don't think you're going to get away from that.
It's
I mean,
the time to
even-
announce stuff that's there. It's the time
Yeah.
to give back and give awards to people that have done something in your world. Like it's that.
Open World or Ignite or
100%.
World, right? Or any of like all of or Cisco Live, right? I mean, all of the big flagship vendors have their conferences to do exactly what you said, right? Like, but I think you have to be a flagship vendor to do that, right? And I think that's one of the biggest problems.
We've seen that, like tiny vendors coming out and starting their own conferences.
And it's so incestuous, right? It's like the sponsorship money.
But
is
are they
insane.
just doing that so that they can not have to pay the higher cost to go to these others?
Yeah.
Like they're only
100%.
doing it as a reaction to the insurmountable cost to be a vendor.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people. If you're in the channel and you don't know the booth, that 8x8 booth you get at
20,000.
Connect, nope. 40,000.
40,000. Which means if you're a startup vendor, most of your revenue is dedicated to the one show you picked in the first year.
Correct. And it's like, well, you can get startup, which is 8. I think you can do that for a year or two, right? You get that little tabletop like it. But like so much of the cost is directly attributable to the amount of money they spend on marketing. so much of it, right? Like I think it was Alex Farley. I'm going to call him out by name here. I think he said
Sure.
like 20% of the cost of Lifecycle Insights was directly attributable to what
Yeah.
you're spending on conferences.
That's right. That's what he said. Yeah.
Like shit.
Without a clear ROI,
Yeah.
with not necessarily the right approach to how to
Yep.
educate and drive success in sales.
And I mean, the vendors need to do that. And I understand, right? Like I have to ask the question, right? Like, of course, at a conference that big with that many attendees, it's going to be expensive. Does it have to be quite as expensive? I don't know.
Sure,
like,
I don't know.
Do I find it really cool that I think we're doing Lionel's Adventure again this year? I think that's the party.
Those are some big kickers.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. But is it worth the like $1.8 million it cost to do that? Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
Was it cool to be at DattoCon and have Shaq DJ a set for an hour?
Yeah.
That was cool. Was it worth the $300,000 it cost? You could directly attribute $5,000 from every vendor there.
Yeah.
Paying for that,
For that
1 hour
one
set
thing.
of Shaq.
And the answer has been capitalism usually rewards
Yeah.
and continues to drive the things that are successful. So one would argue that, Rob and Datto and the things at Beyond and all the things that we experience are at least believedly valuable enough to do that spend, to try to get more people in the seats, to try to have another higher number of people so that we can have enough to ROI the amount of cost that's escalating. I think my takeaway from this, though, and I don't know that I'm right, is what if we tried as vendors in the community to cut back on some of that spend and dedicate that same spend to both social media type methodologies, driving success through those type of methods, getting your vision out in that way, and also things that are directly to those partners, right? That are directly going to add value to the partner space with the same dollar.
I think something like Empath is a little bit of an antidote to this.
Okay.
Right? Like, what if you took some of that conference money and instead
Built
you
training
built-
courses
and you gave them away? I think
Yeah.
Empath has some methodology where the vendor can pay for it, and then they
Stop
those
reading my
courses are
diary,
free
Slagle.
to those users, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what if you took some of the money you're spending at these conferences and you just made the industry better,
100%.
right? And I think that it's on us as the channel partners to also decide what we want out of our conferences. I attend very few sessions at most MSP conferences these days.
Sure.
There's nothing
Why?
to learn there,
Okay.
right? Like for a long time when I was new, I was picking up a lot of best practices and stuff, but like I'm not learning. The 17th talk of Chris Lair scaring the shit out of me. Like, I mean, it still scares the shit out of me every time he gives it, but like, I'm not really picking up any new.
And is that
Stuff
part of
like
this
that.
challenge, is moving from rhetoric to tactical technical? I mean, that
I
would
think
help.
so.
Like,
Well, and I think part of it too, I think back to
because you live on tactical technical. Like,
yeah.
that's your whole jam.
Right. And it's amazing how many people told me my YouTube channel would never work, giving away everything like that. You're too deep in the weeds. And I'm like, okay, 350,000 subscribers later, I guess people want to be deep in the weeds.
Yeah.
John Hammond, million-something subscribers. He doesn't know how not to be deep in the weeds.
Yeah,
You know what I
true.
mean?
Yeah.
And, but there's a demand for it that you have evidence for outside of there.
Yeah.
And I come back to like the Ohio Linux Fest. One of the benefits isn't, they don't have the budget to rent SeaWorld or anything like that. But one of the best parts of that conference for years has been Mad Dog. I don't know if you know who he is in the Linux community. He's the guy that actually got Linus his first deck to program and compile the kernel.
Nice.
He's been the behind the scenes guy, and he's a great storyteller. When they call it story time and Mad Dog, and they do it as an after event. Everyone just sits around and he just tells stories. You can ask him history questions, and everyone loves it.
Some of the interesting after hours things that went on at Wild West Hacking Fest are in that same vein. The like, whose slide is it anyway? They did that was amazing and absolutely hilarious, right? So the premise of that was they just put you in a room. They had a bunch of judges on stage, and you would get a slide deck that you had never seen before, and you would have to present on it.
Yeah,
right.
Awesome.
Like,
Hacker Jeopardy is really fun.
Yeah,
too.
Hacker Jeopardy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, and I think Code Mash has done a really interesting. I did sponsor the water park party this year,
Sure.
since I were trying to bring it back because I do want to go hang out at the water park. But their Thursday big thing, it's like a choose your own adventure. They run
Sure.
some carnival games. They have like a little rave area in one of the things. There's laser tag, right? None of this is super high budget stuff.
No. So you're actually also seeing that same money being spent building community.
Yes,
because that's what
the
that
board
is.
game room
Exactly.
is huge. The board game room at GeekCon
Yeah.
directly came out of what we see at Code Mash. And
And
you
it's
walk by there on
packed.
Thursday, and I think we're going to try to get you there this year. You will see hundreds of people playing board games together
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
people they've never even met.
And it becomes a discussion.
Well, even
point.
here, there was a whole Dungeons and Dragons table
Yeah.
that ran literally 5 people in the seats every minute of the
Well,
conference that I've
and
seen.
PenguinCon created this cool dividing line for here's all of our official talks, and they just called everything else after hours, and everyone can
Yeah.
submit the after hours talks.
That's cool.
And they have an entire. They would part of the guarantee of the hotel. They rented out every party suite, 100% of them, and everyone got to theme a room party.
That's
all in
fun.
one hallway. It was amazing.
So let's ask this then, right? Like how do we fix that, right? Like how do we evolve the conferences from what they are now to where we want them to go?
I have obviously thoughts on this. I think I don't really believe that you'll see a shrinkage of the money spent in them. I don't know that I believe that capitalism will retract. But maybe we do elements like what you're talking about, where if you are not a flagship and you're putting together a community conference, let's put that as an MSP GeekCon, let's put that as a Write a Boom, let's put that as many of those that have that. Even in some ways PAX 8, because PAX 8 has marketplace, but tons of vendors, right? So flagship.
You can't.
Fair.
There's no way to not say that.
Fair enough. Flagship PAX 8. There you go. I mean, I did my one PAX 8 mention in my own show.
It's a similar thing to like I am Ingram's one event. Right?
Sure,
like
sure.
It's your flagship.
So that aside, if we're in those non-flagship events, and even in the flagship events, focus on bringing users that are doing cool things with your tech to drive them to speak. In a lot of ways, building more evangelists in our community in your world as vendors, but also in like taking away the rhetoric and moving towards the tactical, right? I think we're at this stage where maybe people have grown. I mean, even in my own show at the game at PAX 8, I've switched from very rhetorical topic discussion to let's get into the weeds of this and let's show something. And the numbers have gone up 500%.
Yeah.
So if you already do that, which I mean from 1 to 5 isn't a huge jump, 90s, but 500%. But if you do that in the conferences, I think people will walk away with a better understanding of how to move forward and actually buy your product.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so that's one fix is focus on the content. Paid slots need to be not in the vendor's control. That's another option too. If you were in, let's say, MSP GeekCon, and you saw Write a Boom try to do this last year with trying to say, here's your talk, you're going to do this. What do you think about selecting? All right, taking down a rabbit hole.
You really have to make sure those talks are good. Right, I think that's where
CFPs works better. In my
opinion. I think I think Write a Boom fell flat this year because all the curated content wasn't that good. And the problem is, if you give somebody a talk, they're not going to be that good at it.
Yeah.
Right. Like so much of we have personality in our talks for sure. Low production value in our slides, right? Like.
And whiskey.
My thing is I use AI generated images for all my backgrounds. Right? Like we have personality in our talks. When you're given a slide deck or given a topic, you lose a lot of that personality.
You can, but if you select them to give a talk that they already do and that they already are doing, this goes back to where I think curation is so important. Is that if you are going to give those topics or have some thematic alignment of topics, or you want to take someone down the road, then bring in the right people to give them. Right, that's going to do that.
Of the world, you can give him any topic.
100%. Yeah, true story.
Out of the park
true story.
So, what about should people running conferences attend conferences like this?
Yes.
To see what the other side of the world looks like.
If you're a conference planner, go sit your happy ass at a B-Sides or a GurCon or a WWHF or. There's a SmoothCon or
pull out of our industry, go see what
CornCon or any of that. Any of them. ShedCon would have been pretty neat, although a very high Amish and Mennonite populace. I was very surprised by ShedCon. I digress. If you're not at GurCon this year, we share the same conference facility with ShedCon this year. There's thousands of people here that build sheds.
There's Amish.
Yeah.
I love. There's a concept of we can hack anything. Not them.
Not them. They are impervious to this problem. So conference-wise, there would be the other advice I'd give is try to drop the production value a smidge,
a little bit,
to drop the cost while also increasing the quality of it.
You don't need that $200,000 LED wall,
and we do it right. It's badass. It's the coolest thing.
Amazing.
And there's a balance of that. I think you have this balance of: am I trying to impress? Am I trying to drive forward? There's a balance.
If you're a flagship, then by all means do it.
Flagship it up.
If you're a mid-tier vendor throwing a conference, probably not.
Spend the money on the quality, on things that are going to drive people to success.
Like frankly, MSP Live did it so well.
Right before the shutdown.
Right? Every single one of those talks I watched, except maybe one. I think the electric guy fell a little flat. But every single one of the other talks was fucking money.
Yeah.
They were so good. They were hand selected. I think Caitlin dropped that.
Yep.
I think she did a really good job of choosing speakers that she wanted to give the messages that they wanted to give.
Yep.
Nigel's keynote was like amazing.
That was formative for
Yeah,
me.
me
Like
too.
that was
That's
my first
what
time.
made me want
It's what
to
made
speak.
me want to speak.
Yep.
I sat there in the audience with him and said,
Yep.
Nigel, do you get scared? And he literally opened up. He's like, I've never done this. I'm terrified.
Yeah.
This is going to be horrible. And I'm like, what? How are you? Anyways, yeah, it was so good. It was so good.
So you can do it, and I think there are examples of it going well. Like I think that
Is that the other point to make sure we make is that if you're a vendor, you should inspire and drive your users to be speakers.
We should make a list of who the vendors should watch. Like
Oh yeah.
Like,
Their
here's the
homework
kid-
assignment
here's
for,
your homework
for those
assignment.
things.
Because a lot of them are also reproduced on YouTube. So if they can't,
Yeah.
I get it,
Yeah.
and it's hard to fly around, but you can go watch Jay Street's talks. You can
Yeah.
go see a lot of people that we know are A-list people
Yeah.
speaking and say, hey, here's a playlist on YouTube, or do your homework.
Oh, that Jeff McLovin talk. I think that's his name. McJunkin. Jeff McJunkin. Jeff McLovin is from Superbad. Right?
Yeah, like McLovin.
McLovin's
Yeah.
Superbad.
Jeff McJunkin gave a really good talk at Wild West Hacking Fest last year. Low production quality, just talking about like the dumb shit that like if you watch these things, you beat 90% of red teamers.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it was low production value, but man, it was fucking gold.
And it was
content.
fun.
And people should watch
Me
things like
and
that.
Matt Topper did
Yeah.
a talk at B-Sides Peoria last year where we literally just read r/MSP quotes
Yeah.
and talked about them. Like, hey, I can't activate Windows 7. I mean, this is 2024, so maybe there's a reason, right?
Yeah.
In 2023. But we talked through those things. And I think that's the other piece is that make sure that the talks that you're giving build someone and make them more capable. That's all you have to do. If you do that and it's your tool that then they're more capable with, they'll sell more of it. Use more of it, use it better, be an evangelist for it.
And by all means, I don't know.
Too spicy?
Yeah, no, but it's not too spicy. Stop. The distributor conferences are the worst about this.
Okay, that's why you're pulling back. Just punch me.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. It's my open show here.
Stop telling people how to sell your product.
Okay.
Right, like that is a huge. I lit into Ingram at their Cloud Summit event because like they're like we built your whole security stack and configure it all, and I'm like, what happens when a user gets popped? It's like no, stop.
Are you postulating we just need to make them better with those things,
Yes,
and then they'll
like
be able to articulate the value? You're blowing my mind right now, Jason
like,
Slagle.
Educate the users on it. Like, let them decide how they want to fucking sell it. Like, I don't sell any. I sell very few things as an add-on
Yeah,
product.
I don't either. It's
Right, like-
whenever we were doing it, it was prescribed. It
Yeah.
wasn't sold.
So don't come to your conference and tell me how to sell your product because I'm not gonna fucking sell it. It's included in my stack, or I don't have it.
I love you more than I ever
Right,
have
like,
right now,
yeah,
Jason
like,
Slagle. I got to be honest with you. It was, and let's talk about that. I mean, we're dead. It's my show, so I don't care. Let's talk about that. Think about the run rate difference of being prescriptive versus not.
Yeah.
If I go to sell something and I have, let's say, 100 clients, I'm going to call them and say, hey, I need to sell this to you. I need a meeting. We need to have a QBR. We need to have a meeting. Let's talk. And they're going to smell that sale.
Yep.
And they're going to dodge me. And I'm going to get 10% this month.
Yep.
I'm going to get 20% next month. I'm going to get 40% the next month. And when you do the run rate, even if I got 80%, I would never catch up to me getting a higher percentage.
And then what happens with that last 20%? Do they just never get it?
Or do you fire them at some point? Do you then the obverse is I'm simply saying it's part of my new 2022 H stack, and you're going to do it, or in 3 stacks I'm firing you.
Yep.
If you go that route, the 3 people that don't want to do it will call you right now. Their schedule's open instantly. It's amazing.
We have price raises built into our contract.
To just
right?
do exactly
none
that.
of this shit is that expensive.
Right.
Like this
$2 a user is not all that big a
I
difference.
can
Yeah,
afford
exactly.
a $2 user increase and to take that slight hit in margin.
Yep. For a capability that I understand,
Yes.
that I know what I'm going to do with it, that I gain efficiencies and efficacy.
Yeah.
Once you gain efficiencies, it kind of makes up for the $2.
That's exactly it.
100%,
Labor's my
right?
expensive part.
And so
Damn humans.
that's a particular pet peeve conference talk of mine is like, stop telling me how to sell your products. Like,
Yeah.
that's like, I just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I directly punched it. I punched at Jay Rearcy on stage multiple times about that.
Which is also awesome in the sense of teaching to sell is, I think, a byproduct. And maybe I'll say something salacious here. Somebody asked me at a conference recently, what would success look like for my career? Which many of you know, I've sold a company. I've got many other investments. I could not be doing this exactly. But what would be success for me? And I paused for a second and decided whether I wanted to tell the truth or be political. And I chose my inner Jason Slagle. And I said, half of you wouldn't be here. If I was successful, half
Yeah.
of you wouldn't be in the room. There's no barrier to entry to be us.
Yep.
There's no level of professionalism that exists. In fact, to the point that we have to teach you how to sell a fucking tool.
Yeah.
If my CPA ever came to me and said, Matt, I really need you to understand the value of QuickBooks for what?
What?
Fuck me.
Yeah, if you
Like-
take any other industry, any other
professional industry.
and you approach it the way we seem to approach this,
Yeah.
people would laugh at you.
Yes.
Like,
If my
you're
mechanic came to me with these things, if my airplane mechanic, like if my
Oh.
engineer, if my attorney, if my CPA,
Yes.
if my doctor,
any
if my
other service
dentist,
industry would not do.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Well, I hate my job as not a business planner.
that is what has born most
that was a
MSPs.
business
Though,
yeah,
yeah,
personality
so
episode.
I have
Yeah.
technical knowledge and I can do this.
Yeah,
right? Like, yeah.
every senior system admin is 24 hours away from fired, starting an MSP.
That's
how it
right.
works?
That's it. That's it. Dude. I'm done.
Yeah.
Press the F it button. I can get 3 clients and I'll be just as good off. Right. Like,
Yeah.
And so I think that when you think about that, it's a lot of these forces, and maybe we'll go back to this with the conferences. These things have happened because of the economic forces and situational forces that are around us. The reason that people spent so much time on rhetoric and how to sell and all those things was because people were easy and in the market. And if you look at going back to ASCII, which I've never been to one of the conferences for ASCII, they tend to focus on that small startup, first day kind of guy or gal. Same thing with your franchise models, same things with those type of things, where if we were in any other professional industry, there would be clear paths to certification, clear paths to banking, and all the things that one would have to do for it. And it would normalize a lot of this industry. And even as you think about what makes born these GERCons and SMUCons and all the other small cons is practitioners that are already practitioners in somewhat of an enterprise field that have had some vetting space there, learning to be better and wanting to be better in a space. Like,
There are a lot of parallels to draw, though, right? So this part of the reason that this exists in the security industry is it is a learning cliff. We've experienced this week.
Oh,
It
yes.
is a fucking learning
well,
cliff.
especially from the red team
Yeah,
side,
we
boy,
are
we've learned some
climbing-
things.
we're
We're in the Mount
yeah,
Stupid or the
yeah,
Valley
yeah,
of Despair,
yeah,
one
yeah.
of the two. Falling off the end of
For
Mount
sure.
Stupid.
But MSPs have the same problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have running an MSP at scale successfully, right, with best-in-class margins and all the other shit that goes with it. It's hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of automation that needs to go into it to actually be able to compete, right? Like, and we very much have
Someone's saying, hey, T.
we very much have
What's up, James?
knowledge that can and should be shared.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just don't think the vendors are the ones to do it.
But the vendors can be the conduit for it. And this is
Yes.
maybe my final takeaway on this, is that you've already got all these conferences, you have attendees, you have space. Try to find people, and I will actually give PaxSafe credit for this. You know who planned all of Momentum? Beyond? Not Momentum, Beyond? Academy guys. That was it. All the Academy guys and girls got together and said, what should we talk about? And it was just education by internal people. So if you have that kind of capability of sales engineers, or like ask your sales engineers, what are the top 5 problems that people have when they onboard with you, and teach around that.
Go find your most successful client and make them talk about what they're doing.
Yes.
Well, now
That's
you're
what I was
getting
gonna
back
say.
to my strategy, and
Yeah.
we're exposing it again.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll share it here. So when I was at Iconic, one of the things I realized was we were a bit of a unicorn, right? At a you
What,
know.
you mean your 3-level great glass?
Shut up! It goes so much deeper, you bastard. Yes, but we were somewhat of a unicorn in that we were way ahead. We had massive revenues, right? We supported 17,000 endpoints, and so what I realized was I could get some of the tools I needed by just asking to go be their poster boy. And I said, hey, DNS filter, why don't you let me talk about your product, talk about the problems, bring it up on stage, be your person, go do webinars, and I don't want to pay for it. And I'm not saying that that's always the
some of
case, but
we have some of that.
you do
Not
too.
to the
You
level
and Tom
do.
both. Yeah, where maybe find that champion in your space and spend some of that money offsetting some SaaS cost and putting them to some level of expectation of being on stage and educating and driving as a practitioner.
In many cases, I think you'll find you don't even have to necessarily give them the product for free. Pay their way to
So
the
I was
conference.
a good negotiator.
Yeah, you were.
Fair.
Pay their way to the conference and
True.
give them something nice. Like we both done Hackett.
Done.
They sent
Oh,
us
I
a
love
nice-
Hackett. That was one of
they
my
sent
favorites.
us a nice
Yeah.
You're still using it over
Yep,
there.
I got it
Somebody
over there.
else-
Yep.
With a bunch of nice shit in it. Like, and that's all that we
It was
changed for that. You
We all
want
can be
your
Robert
other
Burns,
users to
too.
emulate the
Burns
people
works.
that are doing it best.
Yeah.
Right. So why not ask them
That's
to
it.
talk about it? I think Indy does a good job of this.
Sure.
They have customers in their booth.
There you go.
Right, like they're instead of having like a sales engineer, they're a really lean team.
Yeah.
They'll bring Drew.
You mean
Hacksworth
you
in
can
there.
use people that are passionately using your tools to share their knowledge in ways that benefits others? This
the raving fans model, right? Like Huntress has
mind-blowing.
done a really good
They
job
have
of
crushed
building
it with that model.
Yeah, raving fans, right? Like Emmy has built a ton of raving fans. Make your raving fans talk about how they're using the product.
100%.
Make your raving fans talk about
the problems, the challenges they had. Bring up the biggest challenge
Yep.
they had. Talk about what we had to solve. Or, one of the things I used to do when Continuum was trying to sell, and Austin Roberts was doing that, is as an MSP, he would have me get on the phone with another MSP that was thinking about buying Continuum. You know what I'd tell him? Everything that fucking sucked.
I do those calls
Everything that
quite
sucked.
frequently.
And when they got to the table and bought, they didn't churn.
Yeah.
Because they knew what sucked. They already knew what was going to have to be overcome. Right? Like some of the advice I would give is you need someone that manages those tickets, that actively reaches out to the knock and holds them accountable. Like that's something you're going to have. If you're not ready to do that, you might not be ready for Continuum.
Yeah.
But having someone that can share those things and share that will I think, make your conferences more valuable.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the big thing. We're not going to pull back on conferences. That's not probably happening. But if you already are in that space, make it more valuable is the point.
Yeah.
How do you give vendors that do sponsor more value in that small startup space when we're talking about like the big players? The like, is there a way you could get them more value?
Well, the problem is we have a bootstrapping problem.
Okay.
Right. So many of these conferences are just thinly veiled sales pitches that it's really hard to show value to the MSPs to attend them. So they don't attend very many of them.
Yep.
It's like I've seen the same 1,000 MSPs at every one of these same shows.
That's true for the most part.
Then we come across the guy that I was punching on LinkedIn the other day that he is the 95%
that don't attend.
Yeah.
And it goes back to my first statement of those in the room. Right?
So I think we need to solve that bootstrapping problem, and it's going to be slow, incremental change to get there.
Yeah.
Right? Like you need to start showing value, and I would encourage many of these conferences record all your sessions.
Yeah.
Post
Provide them. There's no gatekeeping.
Yeah.
But if I don't share them, nobody will come next year. Get more value out of the shit you already do.
Yeah.
Like take and use evergreen capabilities out of these things.
Definitely
Right?
shares all of their
Just
talks.
put them on YouTube. Like don't hide them.
I watched every DEF CON site
Yeah.
that I wanted to watch afterwards. Right? Again,
correct.
catch back up
Maybe
on
you
it.
don't
Yeah.
do it for a couple months. Like
Yeah.
shit, I've been really mad about editing all these MSP econ videos I'm sitting on.
Right.
But share them eventually, right?
Yeah.
Like you can still have a live virtual conference if you want to attend with it, but like 6 months later, put all that fucking content out there for free on
100%.
YouTube.
Yeah. And cite back to it, especially as you start making more valuable content. Right? And that'll be how you build your own YouTube following as a company.
Yeah,
exactly. Right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Like, and if you want to be super nice, give the speakers rights to their own talks too, so they can post them on their channels.
Yep. And help you spread your mission, because if those speakers are speaking about your tool and product or service or problem, then that will be beneficial for them as being an expert. That'll be beneficial for you as a vendor.
You've given the vendors a lot of advanced advice here.
We have. We didn't even get paid.
I know.
This is terrible here. No, I tease.
We just want to see.
I just want to see people get better.
Yeah, I want more conferences like this in Code Mesh.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I love the flagship conferences.
Sure.
But not for the reasons I should.
Conference?
I think the biggest point is really flagship conferences need to spend more time on being focused on building content that is directly related to the tactical technical pieces that need to happen for their tool sets or problems, whatever it may be. I think the other piece on that flagship conference is still do the big things that attract people, do and hire Nelly, do the things you want to do, whatever it is. But just understand that the ROI is more in the community growth from those investments, and is more in that space and not really driving.
You need to decide what you want to be. You want to be a party that people go to because they want to party, or you want to be a place people go to so they learn. Because if you ever want anyone other than the owner of that MSP to go there, they need to learn.
Oh, now you're going to open the next 4 minutes we have left on just the biggest problem, which is who the fuck goes to these conferences.
It's been
Let's not even get into that goddamn problem.
To get technicians at econ because of how bad the other.
Or how inefficient they are, so they can't even have somebody out of the conference. The owner isn't even engaged. Again, back to that kind of, there is no professionalism in what we do. Yeah. And I think that's the other piece. It maybe as a vendor.
Well, we said it last night, like the Blumera employee that wanted to come to this, but she couldn't get him to do it. I'm like, if you ever end up in that position again where you want to come to like GurCon, like we'll find you a ticket.
Yeah.
Like,
we got it. In fact, we gave away 2 buttons that we found yesterday. So
Oh shit, I don't have my button. I gotta get
That's all right. Mine's over there. Yeah. You can always just steal that one.
My room's.
That's true. It's true. I think we've gotten close enough to wrap this up.
I think so.
Biggest takeaways from me would be we need to start focusing on the content and value delivered and stop focusing on how to sell. Here's our cool stuff, flashy. The other piece I want to tackle too, and I don't have enough time for it, but I'll just say it. The conferences where it's a giant judging system on how many votes I can fucking get in a boardroom and then turns into just how much I can give away to those people and buy their vote is fucking horseshit. I'll just leave it with that. That is part of what's broken, because then it tends to drive everyone to stop bringing content that is something valuable and bring things that are flashy and fun. We'll sit here and play a game the whole time that has nothing to do with this, but buy that Coots, will be fun. And I'll give away gift cards to Amazon for it. And boy, howdy, you'll really want to buy from me. That is the wrong incentivization, I think. So not enough time to cover it. Maybe we'll have an episode 2. Yep. Closing thoughts?
I mean, we shit on a lot of things today.
We did,
and,
unfortunately. Not my normal style.
There are rays of sunshine, and there are really good speakers, right?
True story.
And they do exist. I mean, I poked at Chris Lair.
Yeah, but Chris is giving back. Slammed up.
100%.
Agreed. 100%.
Right, like
Robert Chiaffi, Wes
Spencer,
Spencer, Alex Farling, Marnie Stockman,
a
whole bunch of them.
Yeah, there's a ton of good speakers. Emulate those people.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway.
And if you're one of those people, do what you're already doing probably and mentor people as we see it. Tom, what's your takeaway?
Vendors, take notes. These are all great ideas. We'll see more of it. You know, I like going to the GERCons, but I'd like to see some of the other things implemented that we talked about there. See how you can drive more community, more conversation. And you don't have to take us to SeaWorld to do it. There is at least someone in finance will be happy. I mean, they'll build community without going to SeaWorld?
This is crazy. We can just play board games that only cost $20.
Board games are cheaper than SeaWorld.
SeaWorld is a lot of fun, and Islands of Adventure is a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, the board game is such a cheap, easy idea. And CodeMash stores them when they bring them every year.
Sure,
but
one-time investment.
Geekcon, we've just been donating them to local charities.
That's cool.
Children's homes and shit.
I've played too much and watched Kelvin cheat. Not cheat, Kelvin. I'd never say that about you. You playing fair and cheating.
Play by his own set of rules.
That's a great way to close.